That was supposed to be me. That was supposed to be me. You cramped up, buddy. What do you want me to say? So that's just, I mean, I think those quotes just give you a really good insight into how down to earth a person and how cool it was to talk to Ladanian. Obviously, he went on to a fantastic year that year. University made it to, I think, the state semifinals, but possibly the regional final. I know they got beat by Corpus Christi Kyle Allen because I did a chapter on Corpus Christi Kyle Allen as well, and researching them. Those two things intersected, as a lot of things did during the process of writing the 41 chapters in the book. But Ladanian rushed for a then city record 2,500 rushing yards, give or take. I don't remember the specifics. In fact, where's Bryce? Bryce is supposed to be here. Okay, so then I have, yeah. That's all that I'd kind of prepared in reading that. And if anybody had any more questions about Ladanian or about the book itself, I'd be happy to answer those. Or I can just go right out to the table or whatever. But yeah, I had a chance to interview Ladanian and Drew Brees, and I started the book with an interview with Coach Briles and then Cliff Kingsbury. But it was really the Ladanian interview when I got it where I kind of turned the corner, where it was like a big name. Because later on, when Adrian Peterson and Drew Brees and guys like that did interviews for the book, it was kind of on the strength of having those names to kind of throw out there. And Ladanian even said when we were doing the interview, because I asked him, it's like, what's the best way to get a hold of these guys? And he said, certain time of year, he said, use my name. Don't hesitate to use my name. So, by the way, Coach Murphy is here. There's a chapter on Coach Murphy's 2004 Crawford State Championship team. That was a fun one to write because that was the only team that I wrote about in the book that I actually covered them during the season. So.
Jen, I remember when we were covering Midway games.
Right.
We would often talk about how you were picking the teams and what did you start from as kind of your base and how did you narrow it down?
Oh yeah, that was cool because I had just done the 4 sample chapters and probably had an idea in my mind of different ones to do. But my dad and I were at the College World Series when I got an email. We were actually supposed to play golf and we were getting rained out, and I got an email from UT Press saying that they were interested in the book. And so that night I sat down. We were staying in Lincoln, and we weren't staying in Omaha, but I sat down in the hotel room in Lincoln, or maybe out in the hall, and just started making a list of, I was going to do 50 high school football stories from 50 Texas towns. And in order to meet deadline and get it was really difficult to get interviews at times because of time of year and things like that, but I settled on 41. But of the 41 chapters, I'd say 38 or 39 came from that original list that I made in the hotel room that night. And another one on the list that would have been cool to do was I wanted to do a chapter on Willie Nelson playing at Abbott. And yeah, but I didn't get a chance to do that one.
Next book.
What's that? The next book, yeah.
What is your next book?
Actually, Tim, will you bring that up to me? This book that Kim mentioned earlier, Texas Sports, will be out in September. It's unforgettable stories for every day of the year. So I'm going to take a chance and unrehearsed. I'm going to look up today's date, just as a for instance. I think it's about Lee Trevino, but no. University of Texas Press is the publisher. Yeah, they actually came to me with the idea in May of 2015, and they said, how do you think we would pull this together? And I thought about, getting a lot of guys like John and Kim and Bryce and having everybody do a month. And I thought about how much they would want to get paid, and I told them, well, I'll just do it. But on this day in 1945, July 15th, right? Yeah. Fort Worth native Byron Nelson won his 5th and final major tournament by claiming the PGA Championship in a 4-3 match play final round victory over Sam Bird at the Moraine Country Club in Dayton, Ohio. Nelson trailed Bird in the 36-hole final match until the Texan won the 29th through 32nd holes to clinch the win. By winning the only golf major held in 1945, the U.S. Open. Sorry. This is the first time I read this in a while. By winning the only golf major held in 45. Oh, okay. The U.S. Open, the Open Championship, and the Masters were not played in deference to World War II. Nelson extended his tournament winning streak to 8. By the time he was finished, Nelson won 11 straight tournaments in his historic 1945 run. So that's a shorter blurb, but that's a good example. And I did, that for every day of the year. And while I went all over the country and all over the state, certainly doing interviews for this one, I did research pretty much every day at the West Waco Library Genealogy Center for this one. So, September 20th. And I think it could be pre-ordered now at University of Texas Press's website.
What time frame did it take you to write the book?
The Republic of Football? Well, as I mentioned, I talked to LaDainian in May of 2014. And then we were at the College World Series in June when University of Texas Press expressed interest. And so I signed a contract with them in July. And we agreed that I would turn in my manuscript at the beginning of September in 2015. And so when I signed my contract, I had the material I had talked to Coach Murphy and his son and another player named Derek Dumas. So I had all the material for the Crawford chapter, though I hadn't written it yet. So between then and, I guess a year later, I'd gathered all the material for the other 36 chapters. And that's why I ran out of time getting to 50. Because it was, I think in the spring, I was at like 30 chapters that I'd gotten interviews for, and I'd had several other lined up. But I knew I could get to 40, and so I talked to him. And the publisher was really cool about, they didn't want to be stuck to a number like, a number like 50. And so that's kind of how that turned out. And my last two interviews, this is really cool. My last two interviews were with Robert Griffin and Colt McCoy at Washington Redskins minicamp in June of 2015. And so when I got those interviews done, all the interviews were in the can. So I just spent the rest of the summer writing. I just wrote a chapter per week and turned it in, I think, like August 30th. So.
What advice would you give to future authors who are hoping to write a sports book?
That's a great question. That is a really good question. I would say just jump in and start doing it and start interviewing people and ask for interviews even if you don't think you can get them, because I didn't think Adrian Peterson would do an interview, but he did. They emailed me back, and some people didn't email me back, like Eric Dickerson, and at the end of the day, I just wasn't able to connect with Earl Campbell for whatever. I talked to his son about it, but I guess he just didn't want to do it or whatever. So for about a quarter of them that I tried to contact like that, I just never got a hold of. But the rest of them, I was able to get. So just jump in and start and set your expectations high.
Is that how you made contact initially, was through email?
I actually, I covered Baylor for a company called the Sports Exchange, Baylor football, and of course I have a long-standing relationship with the media relations people because I worked at the Trib for 7 football seasons. And so when I first had the idea, I emailed Heath Nielsen that used to be at Baylor and asked if I could get an interview with Coach Briles, who used to be at Baylor. And Coach Briles didn't have, I got like 13 minutes, and they were 13 fast minutes, but they were enough to build the first chapter on. And then, well, I had pretty good connections at Texas Tech as well. So then I went and talked to Coach Kingsbury there, who played at New Braunfels High School. And then I just got kind of lucky on LaDainian, or not lucky, but I had talked to Coach Coleman, who is his high school coach, and got a phone number that Coach Coleman thought was right. And I just called that number a couple of times and left messages, and hadn't really written it off, but I wasn't sure. And then I'm just at home one afternoon, and LaDainian called, and it was fantastic. It was like, that was probably the lightning in the bottle moment for the whole book, because Coach Briles fit me in, and I could get an interview with Coach Kingsbury, but LaDainian, that had to come through. And when that came through, then after that, and Cliff had said you should do a chapter on Dat Win, and so that I did a chapter on Dat Win, and that was my 4 sample chapters that I went forward with. Yeah.
So probably, I'm guessing around 100% of every Texas town that has a football team has people who think there should be a story.
Right. I haven't heard as much of that as I maybe expected to, although I probably need for the book to get a lot more popular, and then that'll start happening. It's kind of like Chip and Joe, you know, they get really famous, and all of a sudden everybody's suing them. So.
What present day teams do you think would be really cool to research and write about?
Well, I didn't do a chapter on Lake Travis, and that I have a couple of personal hang-ups with Lake Travis that I won't go into, but I think they would be a cool chapter. The one person that I don't like that's from Lake Travis, I could just avoid him, you know. In fact, they have Michael Brewer was a quarterback at Texas Tech, and his brother is a freshman at Baylor. Yeah. I think that family might be a really cool to do a chapter on Lake Travis because they both went through there and played quarterback. You know, I ended up not doing a Stephenville chapter, and that would be a cool one. There's somebody. Oh, if I'd have started writing the book a year later, I probably would have done Cameron and Bremond, and because those are close and accessible. So I might have done those. And then, who is the team, the West Tech, Canadian? That Canadian would have been a cool chapter. They played Crawford last year in the playoffs, and they were really, really good. That would have been a fun chapter to do.